Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get-started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
This is a mini meditation guided by Bombas. Repeat after me. I'm comfy. I'm cozy. I have 0 blisters on my toes. And that's because I wear Bombas, the softest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that give back. One purchased equals one donated. Now go to bombas.com/add-large and use code add-large for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/add-large and use code add-large at checkout.
Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get-started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, president of Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting and EmailRevealer.com. I'd like to welcome a new sponsor. This show is brought to you by GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com or LifeChangeTea.com. You can find it at both websites. I just got this new tea in the mail, Life Change Tea, and it helps you lose weight, maintain perfect health, cleanse your body from intruders, reduce constipation, and maintain great digestion. Just started using this stuff 3 days ago, and I'm loving it. I get up in the morning. Everybody knows I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and instead of drinking coffee now, I have a little glass of this tea here. And I drink it cold, and I have full of energy. I skip my morning coffee, and I think I'm losing a little bit of weight. I'll give a little update on that Friday night. I'll tell you how I'm doing with the GetTheTea.com, LifeChangeTea.com. Okay. Really excited about my show today. We had on Vince Font a while back. A cool guy. I like him a lot. And we talked about American Sons, the untold story of the Falcon and the Snowman. Everybody knows the Falcon and the Snowman, one of the greatest movies of all time with Sean Penn. You know, I love that movie. I don't know who my friends are anymore. I love that movie. Okay, so we had Sean Penn on, and I've been bugging him for years. Get me Christopher Boyce, who's the Falcon. We got the next best thing. We got Cait Boyce, who helped co-write the book of American Sons, The Untold Story of the Falcon and the Snowman. She's the wife of Christopher Boyce, who's the Falcon. And she's working on a whole new deal right now coming up. Hero to Zero, a Navy SEAL's true life journey. And then that's about Kristin Beck, who used to be Christopher Beck. And I believe he's the first or only Navy SEAL ever to go through a transgender, do they still call it sex change? I guess they do, right? A sex change. Transition, right? Okay. So welcome to the show, Cait Boyce.
Thank you very much for having me.
What do they call that now? They used to call it sex change when I was a kid. What, they call it
transitioning. Transitioning,
yeah. I actually have a friend right now who's transitioning from female to male. She's like 19 years old, maybe 20 years old by now. I've known her whole life. It's kind of, unsettling to tell you the truth. Now, tell us about yourself, though. Who is Cait Boyce?
Oh, good Lord. That is just like the most difficult question in the world. There's so many different parts of me. I think my favorite definition of myself would be a cisgender, middle class, white female who got involved because of the 60s and the 70s with every radical group known to mankind, probably, and understood from an early point in life what discrimination against other people looked like. I think it's because my upbringing was so wonderful that it allowed that visual to be able to see that other people weren't having a life as good as mine. And so it kind of launched me into being that self-propelled radical and working for marginalized individuals from African American to LGBTQIA.
Very interesting. I actually grew up with the Yippies myself. I'm 55 years old. So I was a member of the Yippies back in New York City from like 1977 until about 1982, 84. So I've been on the left my whole life myself, radical, I guess you can call it.
Well, my favorite group was the SDS and the Weather Underground. So, yeah, a little before your
It's Christopher, well, with his parole conditions and stuff like that, is he allowed to be associated with you?
He, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Is there a reward?
He's actually not on parole. I will tell you that. After 5 years of being on parole, I petitioned and had him removed from parole.
Oh, very nice.
He has been off parole. He's been out for 15 years. He's been off parole for 10 years. And yeah, it's a good life.
Now, and how did you meet Christopher Boyce? Was he in prison? Was it before he went to prison? What's the story there?
He was definitely in prison. He definitely was. I was working for a law firm. I was working for a pro bono law firm that dealt with people in prison, a lot of those people in California that were on death row, that were being commuted at that time, and they were being released from prison. So they would come to our office and we would help them kind of put their lives back together, gather identification, learn how to apply for jobs, be able to face an interview, things like that. I enjoyed that. But after work on Fridays, we would all kind of sit around and shoot the bull and talk about cases that were in the news. And one of the cases that was in the news was the Falcon and the Snowman. So.
And then what? You went down to the prison to interview them?
Oh gosh, no. No, actually, it was almost a bet, and I have to tell you that it was years afterward that I actually met Chris, because my focus at that time, once I started looking into that case, because I was intrigued. I mean, let's face it, who wouldn't be?
Oh, it's fascinating, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the character that is Andrew Dalton Lee instilled pity in me. It instilled rage in me. There were a lot of feelings with that. So I got involved. I sent Dalton a message to the prison and asked him if he would talk to me. And some of the guys that I was working with, it became kind of a bet. It was like, yeah, you'll never get this guy out of prison. And I said, well, I got to at least try. And so that's how that started. And that was back in 1980.
Fascinating. Why don't you remind me we did a whole 2 hours on this with the Vince Vaughn.
Did you?
Oh, yeah, about the Falcon and the Snowman, the whole story about the book. But why don't you remind the audience what that whole controversy was about? How did they wind up in prison? What were they accused of doing? The whole story. So
Christopher Boyce took a job at TRW back in the mid-70s, 73, 74. Not all that long out of high school. His dad at that time was the head of security for McDonnell Douglas Aircraft. And so he knew the people at TRW and was able to help Chris secure a job. With little to no background investigation, they stuck this 20-year-old in the black vault, which was handling CIA documents and CIA secrets, which, I mean, I have to laugh at now. It's so preposterous, but it was the whole Watergate era. It was all of that stuff. Chris was fine with his job until one afternoon when a Twix came over that the CIA was interfering in Australian elections and trying to oust Gough Whitlam to put their own man in charge and in power. And it set him off. And I have to, I want to be fair about this. I mean, I'm married to the guy. I got him out of prison, but let's be really kind of fair about it. He went about it the wrong way. They both went about it the wrong way. They should never have taken secrets to the Russians. I personally would have done a Woodward and Bernstein and gone to the press. But as Chris said years later, he didn't really think anybody was going to listen to somebody of his particular age with no background. So,
now, TRW, wasn't that like a credit reporting agency?
Well, TRW, that's just one of a multitude of things that TRW does. TRW is, in fact, a credit reporting agency. TRW also is the manufacturer, the corporation that manufactures the seat belts for Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and Volvo. TRW is also one of the nation's largest CIA Black Vault operatives.
So TRW is in existence today? Under what name?
Yes, it is, in Redondo Beach.
Under what name? TRW?
Under TRW, I believe.
Do they still do credit reporting? No, right?
I don't think they do credit reporting anymore. I think mostly they're doing CIA work.
Now, that's fascinating. So that means that the TRW, this famous credit reporting agency, was working for the CIA.
Well, I think they were CIA before they were actually credit reporting agencies.
That's fascinating. I got to look into that because let me tell you something. There's only 3 major credit reporting agencies, and they're the only ones allowed to collect credit data and report it back. Everyone else who's a CRA needs to purchase it from them and resell it and then do the work for them, correct any errors. So it's just the racket that they got going on. These credit reporting agencies are just fascinating to begin with. And now that you tell me that it's a CIA operation, is mind blowing.
It is a little bit mind blowing when you think about it, because so you have TRW in Redondo Beach that actually had spy satellites on their facility. So it's a little touchy. If you do a quick Google search and just type in like TRW CIA, what comes up is the CIA web pages and all about Boyce's testimony. So
that's the only time it's been leaked out is because of Boyce.
Right.
Oh, this is terrifying. I don't think I can handle it at 12 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. Okay.
Sorry to burst your bubble on that one, but everybody's watching us.
Yeah, that's serious business.
That's why Chris and I were so supportive of Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
Because it needed to be said that the NSA is listening to you. It needed to be said that the CIA is reading what you write. And in fairness, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm kind of I take things with a grain of salt, and I do my own investigation work. But I will say I have no faith in the CIA and the NSA.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they're having a great time with this conversation.
Yeah, I'll use a fake name as we continue. Call me Joe. Oh boy. So now Chris said, and he comes up with this intercept, this transmission about the Australian election, but he couldn't. He was too smart to do this himself, to contact the Russians himself. So he had this drug smuggler friend who had to do it for him.
Yeah, he made the worst mistake in his life. He brought Andrew Dalton Lee into it, and sadly, Dalton's life was his drug business. Dalton was not the popular kid in school, and I think that he Chris was his best friend, and Chris, to this day, and to Chris's credit, I will tell you, doesn't say anything negative about Dalton. He's, he will calmly say to me, "Hey, I loved the guy. He was my best friend." But I think that had it not been for Dalton, this probably wouldn't have ended up in a federal prison.
Well, yeah, from the movie, yeah, you would get that impression. Yeah. Now,
that whiny little part in the movie where Dalton's in the airport and he's like, I don't know who to trust. The one you just quoted.
Yeah.
So not Dalton Lee.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh, no.
Then give us an idea. What's he really like?
Dalton was a member of the Young Republicans. He was a Nixon supporter during those twilight years, all those years ago. He is a very he's a very strong individual. I will give him that. He is a very strong individual. He has a brilliant mind, and he's just not this whiny, weaselly little portrayal by Sean Penn.
And you say he was a Nixon supporter. No wonder he went into crime. Now, now I also heard too, doing the research for the last show, was that actually Sean Penn hired him as an assistant, right?
Yes, he did.
After he got out of prison.
He did, yes.
Do you know what he was doing, how that went?
Well, of course I know what he was doing. I was there.
Yeah.
He was just kind of a gopher. When you're in a halfway house, you have exactly 10 days after getting into the halfway house to get yourself a job of some sort. And they don't care whether it's working at McDonald's or, running as a CEO for a major corporation. You just need to be employed because 25% of your wages go to the halfway house. So Sean, after friends and family reached out, Sean said, well, heck, I'll just hire him and he can come to work for me and it'll solve that problem. Sean and I had actually a fairly decent relationship. He spent some time with me when they had decided to do the movie. And so he and I met in Redondo Beach and we talked for hours about the making of the Falcon and the Snowman.
And what do you make of his politics?
Well, I'm going to reserve judgment on Sean. Sean is Sean's own person, and he's comfortable in his skin, and that's what's important. I try not to judge people based on their politics.
Okay.
I do support his politics. They differ slightly from mine, and the way of going about them differs slightly from mine. But let's face it, I'm not in the middle of a movie screen, and I'm not the one that got an Academy Award and can stand up there and talk politics. I have to be the little person on the sidelines that just battles everything the hard way.
Right.
And I find movie stars have it a little easier than we do.
But do you think you have to compromise your principles in order to get to that position where you can stand on the Academy Awards stage and make announcements?
I don't know. I just know that I don't compromise my principles for any reason, ever.
Okay. So now Chris and Dalton Lee, they go into this business selling these secret stuff, the codes and stuff like that, right? Now, were they making good money doing that?
No. And I want to be really clear about this. They weren't selling codes.
Okay.
And this is where there was a disconnect, and this is where there is still a disconnect. I still hear from people literally on a daily basis who say things to me like, your husband should have been executed for treason.
Right.
And that's hard to take. It's hard to take from a humanist standpoint, let alone a wife's standpoint. What the Russians received were KH-11 crypto cards. Those crypto cards are used and out of date the moment they come out of TRW. Those crypto cards could never have been used to gain access to American secrets, never cost American lives, never did any of that, never had to reroute satellites because of them, none of it, because the codes that go along with the KH-11 crypto cards were never provided. Chris steadfastly refused to provide them.
I want to back up a bit because you mentioned before, and I let it slip away, that TRW had their own satellites. What are these satellites used for?
Well, they were CIA satellites. And one of the satellites in question, of course, was the one that they were, the project that they were convicted of, although that never got anywhere. I don't know if the satellites were launched. Well, I know that a couple of the satellites were launched. They were spying on Russia. The Pyramider document, the Pyramider project, they said was designed so that we could actually see a cat walking on a roof in Soviet Union.
And that was 40 years ago.
So when you question Chris about the Pyramider project and what it was a black vault project. It was never meant to fly. It was in plans only. There was a scale model of the satellite that was built, And what that satellite actually would transpose to today in 2018 is an iPhone.
Wow.
That was the capability of that satellite.
Wow. Okay. Now, what about all the stuff you see in the movie about Dalton Lee going to the Russian embassy and all these adventures over there in Mexico? Is all that accurate?
Oh, it is, yes.
Really?
Yes, it is, sadly. The torture when they arrested him the torture in the movie does not begin to explain how bad the torture was in real life.
That's when he was arrested in Mexico, and U.S. intelligence was down there too, torturing him?
I don't know that U.S. intelligence was torturing him. I know that U.S. intelligence was giving him drugs. He was a heroin addict by that time. He was taking large amounts of heroin. And the U.S. intelligence group and the State Department was trying to get him off heroin so that they could get him back across the border. And they were giving him a combination. Now, they deny this, and it's hard to deny this because I actually have the pill vials still all these years later.
Wow.
The U.S. group was giving him a combination of Meloril and one other medication to, quote unquote, withdraw him from heroin. And the combination of the two drugs actually had the same effect as the heroin. So it was a nightmare for Dalton Lee. And you know, again, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. I understand that. But I think that the torturing of another human being is wrong under any circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you're saying that when he was held in jail in Mexico on these charges, U.S. government was giving him drugs while he was there in jail in Mexico?
I think they were trying to withdraw him from the heroin DTs or whatever heroin addicts go through. And they were giving him a combination of pills that had exactly the same effect as heroin. So needless to say, Dalton wasn't talking to anybody.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's even a legal procedure to do that. Like, how do they have the authority? You know,
I don't know that they do have the authority. I mean, he's an American citizen, but he's an American citizen in a Mexican jail.
Right.
And pretty much the rule of thumb is that when you go into another country and you get arrested, there's very little that the American government can do for you. And that's an interesting fact because people think, well, I'll just go to the U.S. embassy or I'll just call the embassy. It doesn't work that way. There's little that the American embassy can do for you in any other country when you've broken the law.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of torture, physical torture, were they putting him through?
I know that, God, I can't even believe I'm about to say this on radio. I know that they took a sword and sliced open one of his testicles.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I knew that was going to hurt every man listening.
Yeah.
I know that they did try to drown him in a toilet. I know that they did just beat him senseless. They just had his hands, his wrists and his ankles handcuffed together. He's a small man, which made that even more uncomfortable. And they left him to sleep that way. I know that they deprived him of clean food and water. He was a mess. He was a mess.
Okay, that's horrible. And then how did Christopher get arrested then? Did Boyce, not Boyce, did Dalton Lee rat him out?
I don't believe that Dalton would have ever ratted him out. I think that basically the American government, the FBI and the CIA knew full good and well what was going on before either of these two were arrested. And me personally, my belief after 40 years of research into this thing is that these arrests were a complete setup to suit the CIA and to suit the FBI and the United States government. So they waited till Dalton went to Mexico and they arrested him. They charged him with dissemination of information, the Pyramid documents, which those documents, by the way, never got to the Russians ever at any time. They went right back to TRW and right back to the CIA. They arrested Chris at a turkey ranch in Riverside where he had been living, not in an open field flying his Falcon. And they know where they live. They know what they're doing. They just closed in.
And you said to suit the FBI and in what way?
Well, I think that when it comes to making an arrest, and come on, I mean, let's face it. If the FBI is going to make an arrest, they don't just go kick down a door and arrest somebody. They do kind of like to figure out where that person's going to be, how the arrest is going to be able to be made easily and to the best benefit of everybody involved, not to hurt the person that they're arresting, not to have FBI agents get hurt. And that's how they do things. So I think that they had been watching him for quite some time, and they just, after Dalton was arrested, I think it was 4 days after Dalton was arrested, 5 days after Dalton was arrested, they swooped in and grabbed Boyce.
Now, you said that the information they were selling didn't have a lot of value.
It had no value.
Had no value. So then could the FBI or the CIA have arrested them earlier?
Oh, sure. They were stealing documents and removing them from TRW. So, yes, of course. They could have arrested them and charged them with that. But that never happened.
Because they wanted to arrest them. Or maybe they would follow up to see who they were selling it to with Russia.
Well, that's quite possible. There were a lot of little tidbits that nobody could ever make sense of.
Oh, let's hear those.
Well, if you followed the trial, there were parts of the trial that had to go in camera because they were so top secret that it couldn't be testified to in open court. So I've always been I have all the trial transcripts. So I was always very curious about some of the stuff that was held in camera. One of the interesting things that happened during the trial was that the FBI fingerprint experts came forward and explained that they had found Andrew Dalton Lee's fingerprint inside of the safe in the Black Vault.
Right.
He had never been
Vince told me that. Vince told me that. It's fine. Right. How did that happen?
That's the point. He had never in his life been in TRW. He had never been to Chris's workplace, had never even been on the grounds at TRW. And yet there's a fingerprint?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
That always stuck with me. And that was one of the things that bothered me greatly about Andrew Dalton Lee's conviction. I think that Dalton, I think Dalton actually got convicted mostly just because he was stupid. I think they were out looking for Chris. I think that was the connection they wanted.
What other little things made no sense? Anything else?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess what never made sense to me was the fact that they were charged with stealing the Pyramider documents and transporting the Pyramider documents to the Russians. Well, the Russians never got the Pyramider documents. And I don't know if Vince told you this little fact, but I'm going to tell you how crucial the Pyramider documents were.
Okay.
Andrew Dalton Lee served 20 years in prison for the Pyramider documents. Christopher Boyce spent 25 years in prison. He got a 40-year sentence. Dalton got a life sentence. The Pyramider documents during the trial were so sensitive that the CIA moved a giant safe into Kenny Kahn's office, Dalton's attorney. And the Pyramider documents resided in that safe. Every morning, 2 CIA agents would come with the aluminum briefcase, handcuffed to their arm. They would put the documents in there and they would take them to court. The documents were never released during any of the court hearings, and they were held in camera only for the judge's eyes. Got all that?
Yeah.
After the trial, the CIA came and they moved out the safe. After the boys had been convicted, they moved out the safe. When they moved out the safe, they left Pyramider documents still listed as eyes only, beyond top secret. They were eyes only. Left them sitting in the middle of the floor of the attorney's office.
Accidentally or on purpose?
I guess on purpose.
Oh, my God. It's just unexplainable.
Those documents, and I check this frequently, those documents have never been declassified.
But the lawyer still has them in his possession.
No, the lawyer doesn't have them.
Destroyed them? Gave them to you.
I can't say where they are because it would be a federal crime.
We don't need any more problems.
No. I don't need to go to prison for espionage.
Yeah. No, because you don't have someone on the outside to help you get out. Now, what about so they actually went to trial. There was a trial. They put up a defense.
Yeah.
What was their defense?
Andrew Dalton Lee's defense? Well, Andrew Dalton Lee's defense was to blame it all on Chris.
Oh, no.
And Chris's defense was to blame it all on, everybody else and Andrew Dalton Lee.
So basically, the other guy did it.
Yeah. I think Chris felt that he was backed into a corner. You have a father that's a former FBI agent and the head of security at McDonnell Douglas and has multitudes of CIA contacts. And I think it was just so overwhelming for him. But I think in his heart, Chris always expected to be caught, always expected to be punished.
All right.
I think it wasn't a surprise to him.
Now, just to clarify again, a lot of people think when you see the end of the movie, you think that these guys got the death penalty for treason, but they weren't charged with treason. What were they charged with again?
They were charged with violation of the espionage laws, and espionage is not a death penalty offense.
Right. So, and they each one got 20 years, the other one got 25 years.
No. Andrew Dalton Lee received a sentence, which at the federal level is minimum 10, maximum 30. And Christopher Boyce received a 40-year sentence and then added on to that with bank robberies and escape.
Right. Now, when I did the last show, I got a whole bunch of messages saying that Christopher Boyce received special treatment while he was in prison, like he was housed at a gym or something. What do you know about that? Huh?
Received special treatment?
Yeah.
I wonder what that defines out as. Or what would that look like?
Well, that he was housed in a gym. He wasn't housed in a regular cell like the other inmates.
Absolutely untrue.
Untrue. Okay, because that's out there. You've heard that before, right?
I haven't heard that before, interestingly enough. Absolutely untrue. For the most part of his confinement, he was held in solitary.
Then how was he able to escape?
Well, at the beginning of his confinement, he wasn't held in solitary. He was at Lompoc. Okay. But Lompoc at that point Lompoc had gone from being a federal correctional institute. So when it's an FCI, I mean, you have visitors. Family was able to come in the early days. I mean, they could actually bring in lunch, all that kind of stuff. As it started to get more restrictive, Lompoc became a USP, United States Penitentiary. So, and if you've ever seen the institution that he actually escaped from, it's pretty foreboding. So he certainly was not held in a gym. He was in a maximum security United States Penitentiary. He just outwitted them, which is why he ended up, after his rearrest, spending so much time in lockdown. It was torture. And they did it because he did something that they never could figure out. And every day, the Bureau of Prisons wanted to know, how did you do it? How did you escape? How were you able to do this? And he wouldn't tell them.
That's what I want to hear, too. How was he able to do it? Tell us how he got out. How did he do it?
In our book,
there
is actually a diagram along with photographs that were taken by another inmate of Chris at all of the little areas where the United States Bureau of Prisons defenses were down. Chris has a very militaristic mindset. I don't think that there's a military history book that he doesn't know or hasn't read. He knows every battle from the Civil War on, and that's how he plots things out. He's very careful. And so that's what he did. He didn't just jump in to try to do something.
Okay, but that brings up a good question, too, because now he never served in the military, did he? Or did Dalton Lee?
No, neither.
Now, how come? Wasn't there a draft at that time?
There was a draft at that time. But you're talking about two kids who were fresh out of high school.
Okay. And I guess they were in college. They got a deferment because they went to college.
The draft in 70. I'm trying to remember. You would think I would remember that off the top of my head. I think we started to curtail draft numbers in 1974.
Yeah, 73, 74, right there, yeah.
So while they both would have registered for selective service at age 18, that doesn't necessarily mean that they would have gotten a draft number.
Okay. And were they in the ROTC, anything like that?
No.
What about any kind of what were their majors in college?
Well, Dalton didn't go to college. Chris was a history major.
History major. Okay.
And actually has his bachelor's degree in history.
And what school did he go to?
He graduated from Hamline University in Minnesota.
Hamline in Minnesota. Okay. All right. Now, back to this escape. Did he have help? Did you know him around the time of the escape?
No, I swear to God, I didn't.
I want to get that reward.
I know, yeah, right. He was, I will tell you, there was a fortunate streak here. One of the inmates that Chris did time with was a gentleman named Calvin Robinson. And Calvin Robinson helped protect Chris because, I mean, Chris was a little white boy in prison in his early 20s, and there were people gunning for him. So Calvin became his friend, and Calvin protected him. Calvin, years later, went on to be fairly well known for having like 340 tons of pot under the Golden Gate Bridge, and was rearrested in 1983. But it was Cal that, after Chris escaped, told him, you know, where he needed to hide and got him to Idaho.
So you didn't explain to us exactly. He was able to breach a wall and go through a ditch or something like that. Wasn't there like a ditch he rolled through, something like that?
Let me tell you the humor of Christopher Boyce, and I think about it, and honestly, it is humorous. So Christopher, first of all, got himself on the movie committee so that he could show Escape from Alcatraz.
Okay.
Then he got himself assigned to the art department so that he could make paper mache. And so he made a paper mache dummy of himself. Then he got himself on the grounds crew and ended up in a tiny little subdrain. If you look at the picture of the subdrain, I mean, I'm fairly thin and I couldn't fit in that thing. So, I mean, he's very systematic all the way through here. And that's exactly what he did. And then he breached the wall where he knew that he couldn't be seen, where they were building a new guard tower.
And all these documents and diagrams and pictures can be found in American Sons, The Untold Story of the Falcon and the Snowman?
Absolutely.
Is that the newest version?
It is the newest version, yes.
Okay. Now,
it's the 40-year anniversary, you know.
Now, Vince Vaughn tells me this story, that after he gets out of this prison, that he hides out in the woods for 30 days on his own, like eating nuts and berries. Is that the story?
Well, he was eating nuts and berries, and he had a practice. He wouldn't seek out bugs, but if one landed on him, it was fair game. So, yeah, that's what he did.
And so he was living on his own out there for 30 days. Was he building fires and stuff like that? How come we couldn't find him in those woods?
Well, first of all, you're talking about the Santa Ynez Mountains, which is a huge landscape. It's pretty easy to get to hide and get lost up there.
Okay, so for 30 days, no food, right? No water, no way to clean himself up and stuff, right?
Right. Streams.
Well, streams, okay, but still, you're not shaving, right?
Right.
You know, you're roughing it, okay? And then he was able to be picked up as a hitchhiker. Someone picked him up hitchhiking.
Sure, it was the 70s, or actually that time it was the 80s.
So he had no help. No one he knew came and picked him up.
Nobody he knew came and picked him up.
And then where'd he go to right away? This guy Calvin Robinson told him a safe house he can go hide out at.
He went from the Santa Ynez Mountains north to the not the Bay Area, but close enough, and met up with Calvin. And then Calvin got him from California to Idaho, to Bonners Ferry, Idaho, where he was with Gloria White, who was Calvin's former wife.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, did they have a little romance or just
Oh, no. Gloria's since gone. She's passed on.
Comrades in arms. Okay. Now, then he takes off on this bank robbery profession.
Yeah.
Yeah, describe that.
Yeah, that's not my happy spot.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give him 2 snaps. I said to him one afternoon, "Why the hell did you rob banks?" And he said, "Well, I couldn't go to work at 7-Eleven and I needed money." Okay, well, I get it, but still. I think he regrets the bank robberies more than he regrets anything else because he scared people. He truly scared tellers. And as gentle as he tried to be, you're holding a gun on people. I will tell you that 9 out of 10 of those robberies, the gun was unloaded. I interviewed those tellers before I went to the parole commission to seek, the appeal that finally released him. And I have gotten no negative comments from any of the tellers that were robbed.
Okay. How many bank robberies did he do?
Well, he pled guilty to 3.
Oh, okay, 3. And how many did he really do?
By my estimate, I think there were 24.
Really? My
Yeah.
goodness. And they couldn't pin him? They had no matching witnesses or anything, or cameras or anything to match him to those other 20?
Well, in those days, if you think back to like 1980, in those days, it was black and white Polaroid pictures
Right.
that were scanning the bank lobbies. Now it's all digital, and they'd be able to catch you just very quickly. But I actually have one of the original photographs that came out of the machine that shows him robbing the bank. And the photo is so grainy and so bad, I'm surprised anybody could find. I wouldn't have noticed him if he was standing next to me.
Actually nowadays, they don't even call the cops.
Yeah.
They just hand over the money now because they don't keep such a little amount of money in the drawer.
Right.
They just, maybe that's just here in Vegas, but that's what they do here in this neighborhood. I know for a fact that they just hand over the money, and no alarms, no nothing.
The average bank robbery in the United States takes a haul of $700 or less.
That's right.
As a mandatory minimum sentence of 25 years. I don't know about you, but I got better things to do with 25 years.
Yeah, and I hear you. Now also too. What year did the movie come out?
The movie came out in 84.
Okay, so 84. And when did he get caught and recaptured?
He was recaptured in August of 81. He escaped in January. He escaped January 20th, 1980. Was recaptured August 21st, 1981. I can't believe I remembered those dates.
Now that's interesting. Now how come? Because the story's much more interesting. When you think the guy gets out, he breaks out of prison, he's robbing banks. Why didn't they include that in the movie?
Well, I think the movie was the focus for the movie was the book, the original book, Falcon and the Snowman, which of course certainly didn't concentrate on what happened afterward.
Yeah, but you think, they could have wrote another chapter on the book and released it, and then I guess maybe they purchased the rights or whatever.
Right.
Okay. How did he get recaptured?
He was turned in.
Oh, really? Who turned him in?
Yeah, he was turned in. The gentleman that he was robbing banks with that were kind of co-conspirators in the bank robbery were a couple of brothers, and they, in fact, turned him in for the $50,000 reward.
Well, then, in turn, didn't he turn them in for the bank robbers?
No.
No. So they're still out there running around?
Well, one of them's on death row in Idaho for killing a cop. So they weren't the nicest people on the planet. I had a great friend, Denny Barron, who was a United States Marshal. He was the supervising marshal in the Seattle office. And he was actually the one that captured Christopher Boyce. And he and I met years after that. But I liked Denny. And he said that had they not been turned in, or had Boyce not been turned in, they probably would never have found him.
Hmm.
They were sitting in Port Angeles, Washington, which is a tiny little town. The U.S. Marshals were in Port Angeles, and they were there for 2 full weeks before they even spotted him.
Wow. So now, did he go to trial? Well, I guess the escape is cut and dried, right? And right. So how does that work? You go to trial.
Escape is cut and dry. So he got on a federal escape. The maximum sentence is 5 years.
Really?
He received 3 years from Judge Leidick at the district court in Los Angeles. The bank robberies, during the bank robbery trials, he was involved in the trial for about, I want to say 2 weeks worth of trial when all of a sudden he pled guilty, which shocked everybody. But the truth of the matter is that he pled guilty to keep Gloria White from being roped into the whole thing. She was, yes, she allowed him to stay at her house, and yes, she helped him. She was not a conspirator, and he wanted to protect her. And it's just the way Chris does things. He would have done that. So, if
you're not going to get another 5 years for escape, it's foolish not to try, right?
Well, that's my feeling, but, there's an awful lot of inmates who die trying.
Yeah, that's true too, yeah.
If you look at the history of escapes from Lompoc Penitentiary, the escape just prior to Boyce was Leonard Peltier.
Oh, really?
And Leonard lasted all of 4.5 days on escape status.
Yeah, I interviewed his son.
Yeah, I worked on the defense team for a while, but they don't listen really well, and he becomes a martyr for people that want him to be there, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. We had petitions trying to get him out before Obama left office, because now there's no hope. There's no way we can get a pardon or any kind of.
Well, there's a way to get him out, but nobody wants to hear it. So,
real quick, how do you get him out?
Well, the way you get him out is not to make it front and center at every single one of his parole hearings. He's an outlaw prisoner, so he has a parole hearing every 24 months. So what routinely happens is the American Indian Movement and all of his supporters get out there in the parking lot, and they start calling CNN and the news services, and it goes on the wire, and this is ridiculous. This is not what the Parole Commission wants to see. What they want to see is what I like to call the mea culpa, the act of contrition, which is exactly why Chris and Dalton are out and why Calvin Robinson's being released soon. There's a right way and a wrong way to do a parole hearing, and the American Indian Movement has been served by having Leonard Peltier in prison.
Right. Yeah, I can hear what you're saying there, Now, this is about the time after Christopher Boyce is convicted on these extra charges, bank robbery and stuff, they put him back. This is about the time you get in touch with him?
I was in touch with Dalton. And there was a moment in Dalton's life where he thought that I was aligned with Christopher Boyce. Talk about paranoia. But, that's just the way he thought. I spoke to Chris for the first time in 1981, not all that long after he was rearrested. When they got him to Marion Federal Penitentiary, or after he was stabbed, that's when he and I became people who know each other. That's the best way to put it.
Okay, that's when you became acquainted.
Yeah.
Not on your first date, right? Well, when did the romance start? Let's get into that.
Well, I think the romance started for Chris in the very beginning, but it didn't start for me. I never intended to get married, so it came as a complete shock to me as I was standing there and saying I do. Yeah, he has a way about him. He's very convincing. He figured that from the very beginning, if I got him out of prison, we were going to live happily ever after.
I guess he was right, though, right?
Well, here we are 15 years later. We're still married.
Yeah, it seems like you have a nice life, too. It's only off the air. You got the chickens and the snakes and the birds and, the whole factory going on there. Right? The 5 dogs, It seems like you guys are happy. Up there in a nice part of the country, that's for sure. So how'd you get him out?
Have a good life, yeah.
Yeah. How'd you get him out?
How did I get him out? Well, I got Dalton out first. Okay. There was no way that Chris was going to get out unless I could get Dalton out because Dalton had a life sentence. So it took me 20 years to get Dalton out. And the way that I finally got Dalton out was to go to Judge Kelleher. Dalton had made a name for himself in prison. He was the first federal prisoner in the history of the Bureau of Prisons to take and pass a certified dental technician course that was being offered at the prison.
Wow.
So they were using him through varying federal prisons to do the dental work. He was very talented. He was very smart. And I took this great work project of his and I wrapped it up into a nice presentation and presented it to Judge Kelleher, who was the sentencing judge. And then I explained to Judge Kelleher what happened routinely at Dalton's parole hearings. I also explained that this was a true case of rehabilitation. And it took Kelleher a while, but he actually called me back and he agreed with me.
And he never mixes up the Novocaine with the cocaine.
Well, he doesn't, he doesn't do work anymore. But so once Dalton was released, I hadn't talked to Chris in, 8 years, almost 10 years.
Okay.
And I was living in San Francisco, and I thought, well, maybe now's the time to send him a little note. So I sent him a little note card, and I just said, I just want you to know that Dalton's being paroled. This is what I did. Is it your turn yet? And within a week, I had a letter back, and he was on the phone, and that was in 1995. And so we stayed in contact from that moment on.
And when did he finally get out?
He was released on September 16th, 2002, and we were married on October 19th, 2002.
Oh. What was the ceremony like?
Quiet. Okay. Quiet and hidden. It was the first time in 25 years that he'd seen most of his siblings.
Wow.
And so it was a very emotional day. My family was there. His family was there. We had about 68 friends and family. Our friend, Pat Miller, who is kind of the guy who invented motion capture and all that, has a great home in Occidental, California. And we were married in his front yard in a stand of redwoods in front of a little stream.
We've only got about 5 more minutes to talk about American Sons, the untold story of the Falcon and the Snowman. And then we're going to come back and we're going to be joined by Kristin Beck, who's a former Navy SEAL, Hero to Zero, Navy SEAL's true life journey. What is your life like? Does Christopher work? Is he able to work?
He and David Lee, who is Dalton Lee's brother, have a business in Oregon. They did flip houses for a while, and they have property now, and they're running another business, and he's very successful.
And David Lee, you knew him his whole life back when they were kids and stuff too?
Absolutely.
Older brother or younger brother of?
Younger.
That's fascinating. Isn't that fascinating?
It is.
That he would be friends with the kid, the younger brother of the guy's partner and his big ass. Now, are they allowed to talk to each other? Probably not, right? No, there's no rules.
No, they are. They're neither. Nobody's on parole, so those parole laws go out the window. But Chris and Dalton have no contact.
And for just they're not interested or hard feelings.
I think that's Dalton's choice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Any idea why?
Well, sometimes you need to be right.
And what about Dalton now? What does he do for a living?
I don't know.
Really? Now, you know what? You're right. Because I remember when I first decided I wanted to do a show about this, there was no contact for him for anything. But I found Vince fun fairly easily. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get a hold of him.
I haven't spoken to Dalton since 1999.
Well, I hope he's doing well. It's a great.
So after 20 years of being best friends, I haven't spoken to him since 1999, and that's
right. The one that got him out. Why would he be mad at you?
Well, I married Chris. That didn't help.
Really? Oh, come on. You got to forgive that.
Yeah.
Well, we're toward the end of the story. What do you want to leave us with in all this?
The saving grace in my book, I mean, when people ask me about American Sons and how did that feel, it was very cathartic because I'd spent so much of my life working for these two. But the takeaway from that book that I hope that people see is redemption, rehabilitation, and hope, just hope. As any reader of the book knows, I went through my own journey during the period of time that I was walking the path with these two, and that was being diagnosed with stage 3B cancer and being told I was terminal.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But I think that not giving up and just moving on a path to what I believed was helping other human beings. I think it saved me, it saved them, and I think that's always my takeaway from American Sons is just that positive energy and that commitment to another human being for no reason other than they just deserved it.
I can identify with that. I hear you. But what is going on now with your health? Are you okay?
I have been in remission now. This is my 6th year in remission after being diagnosed in 1996. I've had 4 recurrences, a bone marrow transplant, all that fun stuff. But yeah, this is my 6th year of being in remission. I never thought I'd hear that word.
Yeah, right. Thank God for that. Let's all hope and pray that everything keeps going well for you there.
Yeah, I'm not a prayer, but yeah.
I know. I'm a prayer. We'll pray for you. Don't worry. My audience prays, man. We like to pray over here. Oh, my goodness. Well, thank God for that. Thank God you're with us. And how's the relationship with you married someone out of prison? How's the ups and downs with that? How's that go?
Oh, my God. Well, okay,
right?
It's not that you marry somebody out of prison. It's that you marry somebody that, when you have a 22-year-old, and I say this for the entire criminal justice system, when you take a kid, 18, 19, 20, 21, and you put those people in prison and you hold them for 20 or 25 years and release them, mentally, they are still the age that you put them in prison.
Exactly.
So while Chris turned 65 last Friday, somewhere in there is still a 22-year-old who is just, bouncing off the walls.
That is so true. But listen, you can always tell them, hey, I got you out. I'll put you back in, right?
Well, I've done that on a number of occasions. It doesn't work yet. Sorry.
Incredible story. American Sons, the untold story of the Falcon and the Snowman. It's written by Cait Boyce, Christopher Boyce, and also Vince Font, our friend here. And look up the old show, guys. Check out the show, the original show I did with Vince Font. I think we went on for 2 hours. Went on every detail of this case. Books on Amazon. You got a website?
The Falcon and the Snowman.com.
Okay. We'll be right back after these messages with more of Cait Boyce. We're going to be joined by Kristin Beck, a hero to zero, a Navy SEAL's true life journey, right after these messages.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Hi folks, Ronnie here from Life Change Tea. There's a lot of hubbub about the ramifications of GMOs. First of all, what are GMOs? Genetically modified organisms. Yee! Man-made organisms entering our body, changing and damaging us from the inside out. What's our defense? First of all, not eating them. Second, cleansing from them when we do eat them. Thank God for Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea cleanses from toxins, heavy metals, and helps flush GMOs out of your body. Our unique blend of herbs help cleanse you from the inside out, helping you feel refreshed and clean of yee. We also carry unique one-of-a-kind supplements. So order online at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Rid yourself of the yee that contaminates your food and water. Go to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Get the tea, your best defense.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company. They're located in India, so you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service. They offer all sorts of business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshoring, research network, customer care, press release, content writing and distribution, and much, much more. Now, you can get a hold of Subash Technosis by email at info@subhashtechnosis.com. Their website is www.subhashtechnosis.com, and their Skype is ANUSHASUBASH. Remember, all these shows on Awake are brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You also do all the kind of different services for you. An online dating service investigation. It's called an online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us your husband or your boyfriend, your girlfriend's email address, and we trace it back to their online dating websites, and we return a list of all the dating sites that that email is registered to. We can expand on that investigation and trace it back to porn sites, escort service sites, swinger sites, gambling websites, and even prescription drug websites. If you think your ex-husband or something is addicted to prescription medication or involved in an extreme online pornography addiction, we can produce a report for you that you can use in court. Adoption investigations. If you want to locate your birth parents or your birth child you gave away for adoption, we can do adoption investigations for you. Asset searches for you. Locate bank accounts, hidden assets, hidden properties, hidden income, all different kinds of services in the asset search investigation. Email tracing. If you need to locate or identify somebody from just an email address, we do an email trace investigation for you, and all kinds of digital forensics, computer and cell phone digital forensics, where we can recover deleted content from an email or a hard drive and produce a report for you that you can use in court. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. You can have your ad played here at oppermanreport.com every Friday night, 5 p.m., and Saturday night, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Friday nights, too, we do a live portion for 1 hour that I just do a live monologue. The ads are very, very inexpensive, and they're also played in the Opperman Report member section. In the member section, you can find all kinds of exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. It's as cheap as $6 a month, $20 a quarter, or $75 for a year. If you contact me directly at oppermanreport@gmail.com, I'll set you up with a little special deal there where you get a discount if you PayPal me directly, and you can get a copy of my book. I want to thank Sean Duff from strawmanmusic.com. He's an excellent musician. And I also want to thank William Ramsey, who helps us produce the show and book guests. You can find William Ramsey, who's an excellent author, at William Ramsey Investigates on YouTube. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh boy, it's about 2 inches thick. And there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles, Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you can find it in the OppermanReport.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Snowman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Snowman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. I'm the president of Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting and emailrevealer.com. I want to welcome our new sponsor, GetTheTea.com. You can find them at GetTheTea.com or LifeChangeTea.com. A lot more than just tea over there, too. There are all kinds of different herbal supplements. And even this tea is like an herbal drink. It tastes great. And I've been taking it for 3 days now. I'm feeling really good. So getthetea.com. Check them out. And check them out on Facebook, too. And if you see their Facebook page, give them a little like over there. Show them a little love. We spent the last hour with Cait Boyce, the wife of Christopher Boyce, the Falcon from Falcon and the Snowman. She's the author of American Sons, The Untold Story of the Falcon and the Snowman. You can find the book on Amazon or falconandthesnowman.com website. Also, too, it'll be in the Opperman Report bookstore at oppermanreport.com. Now, we're being joined now by former Navy SEAL, I guess you say former Navy SEAL, Kristin Beck. We still have Cait Boyce with us. But Kristin Beck, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, there you go. Now, tell us about yourself. Who is Kristin Beck?
Well, you said former Navy SEAL?
Yeah,
I'm a retired Navy SEAL. Retired
Navy. That's right. If it's former, yeah, if you say former, you got kicked out or something, right? So it's retired Navy SEAL. Right?
And I'm still the same person. I'm still the SEAL that, don't get in a fight with me because I'll probably kick your ass.
Okay, great. Hey, watch your language there, okay?
I'm sorry.
Who is Kristin Beck?
So, I don't know, a farmer, a spiritual person. I like the color red. I don't know. I mean, how do you want to explain somebody, in one sentence? Well, I was a Navy SEAL for 20 years. horseback riding and growing up on a farm as a kid. And, my father was a football coach. My grandfather was a football coach also and played for, the team that was before the Vikings, the Minnesota Titans. And, I don't know. So I grew up in this really hardcore football playing family. And, when I was really young, like grade school, and I always knew that I was a little bit different, I wasn't always in all the same stuff. And, one day when I was in second or third grade, I was wearing one of my sister's dresses and my dad caught me, and it was a pretty good backhand and a bunch of Bible verses. So at that point, I pretty much closed it all up and just said, okay, well, I guess that's what the Bible told me to hate myself. So I pretty much from that point on bottled up and hated myself.
Oh, that's terrible. Is that like your earliest memory of all this?
Yeah, pretty much is.
Oh, that's horrible. So then, but
it's a confusing thing. I mean, the thing is, I've learned over the years, I've talked to tons of kids and people about this stuff. It's like, as a young child, you know who you are. You can look at yourself in the mirror. What's that?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, so it's just one of those things that kids are pretty smart, I mean, they know. And they know what hate is, and they know who they are. They know what identity is. And I just think that, as adults and as leaders in the community, that's who we look up to, and we see them doing certain things, and we try to imitate, what the adults are doing, what the leaders are doing. We try to do the best we can so that the leaders and the adults and your parents are proud of you, and so we get told who we are, and sometimes it doesn't always really match up. And when it doesn't match up, it's really confusing. So that's pretty much where I grew up. And I know I've spoken with Cait about this a lot. And, she's a leader in PFLAG, which is Parents of Lesbian and Gay. It's a really good group. And, we've spoken about it at length. And I just think we need more examples. We need more role models. We need to have more open minds and, listen to the kids a little bit more. It never happened to me.
Yeah, you talk about how it's confusing, for you. And I was mentioning earlier in the show, I got a really good friend who's doing this right now. I've known her from like 18 years old. I guess she's like 21, something like that now. And she's transitioning into a male. And it's confusing for me, too, because I've always known her by one name. I've always known her to look one way, to act one way. And then, now she's taking testosterone, and she's a man. She looks like a man, she's she's manly, and it's confusing. It's off-putting. It's disturbing. It's confusing to me, to see this and for my mind to register in my mind to see this.
Well, think about it from his point of view.
I can imagine.
So he's been growing up his whole life like this, trying to balance or trying to make everyone happy except himself, which is pretty much the same point that I was that I was working so hard to try to make everyone around me accept me for something that I wasn't, and making everybody else happy and doing everything for everybody else. And so I never did anything for myself. So it's not easy. And so the confusion that you're facing, just trying to see him for who he really is and not the girl that you once knew, is torment for him. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And all this is outlined in the book that's coming out. Hero to Zero, a Navy SEAL's true life journey. And this is the subject of the book is Kristin Beck, and Cait Boyce is the author of the book. Now, do you think that maybe when you were a kid and you got busted in the dress like that, that you're overcompensated, and that's what caused you to become this big, rough, tough football player and going into the Navy SEALs?
No, I mean, I was always that person. And so, I mean, I know a lot of rough, tough, females, and I know a lot of, right now we're putting words that apply gender to it. So for you to be rough and tough, you have to be male. That was my dog.
All right.
So we do this constantly. We're always adding gender, pronouns and things to, I don't know, somebody just pulled up. So to these words. And Cait, do you want to take this over for a second?
We thought Cait had the problem with the dogs. Cait has 5 dogs, man. You only got 1 dog? All right, go ahead, Cait.
It's a service dog, though.
Oh, okay. So, Cait, how did you two come in contact with each other?
We actually met through a mutual friend who did the first interview when American Sons came out, John Aberle, who does a syndicated show out of Philadelphia. And in talking to John, I mean, he did a 3-way interview with Vince and Chris and me. It was one of the few interviews that Chris ever gave. And in talking to John one afternoon, I was explaining my role at PFLAG here in Central Oregon. I'm the president of Central Oregon PFLAG, which is Parents, Friends, and Families of Lesbians and Gays. It's the largest and the oldest LGBTQIA organization in the country, having been founded in 1972. And so John and I were talking about that, and I had already seen the movie Lady Valor, and John said, oh my gosh, one of my closest friends is Kristin Beck. And so, it just kind of, things happen. It was pretty amazing.
So Lady Valor is a movie about Kristin Beck?
Lady Valor is a movie that CNN did with the help of Kristin. And, we all have to remember that Kristin actually came out after retirement from Navy SEALs on the Anderson Cooper 360 show. That's some bravery.
Oh, really? Well, describe that. What was it? What happened there?
Well, I'm going to let Kristin describe that to you. But it was, I watched that interview and I watched that movie, and I have to tell you that I still, and I think it's because my heart just hurts when I see that level of pain. One of the hardest things in the transgender community, which you just touched on, is misidentification. Mm. So when you misidentify people, yes, you knew that person as a little girl, but that's not a little girl anymore. And gender identity is crucial to all of these kids.
Is Kristin back yet?
Yes, yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry.
I think you're driving to the pound with the dog over there. Okay. So, why don't you tell us about your career in the Navy? Tell us about Anderson Cooper and coming out on Anderson Cooper. What happened there?
Okay, well, Anderson Cooper is awesome. So he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. So I first came out was kind of like February, and then of that year, and I kept it kind of quiet, and I didn't really go on any shows or anything. And then an unfortunate book came out, and then everybody started calling and trying to get hold of it, and I refused to go on any TV shows or any radio shows or anything for about 3 days. And I kept having people knock on the door and calling me constantly. So I finally said yes. And I said yes to only one show. It was Anderson Cooper. So I went on that show, and they made a 1-hour special. And then I got called by CNN about a month later, and CNN Films, they said that there's a lot more to the story, and they wanted to make a documentary about that. And so then that's how the documentary started. And that's what Cait was talking about a little bit ago. Was Lady Valor, was a documentary about me.
Okay, but a lot of people transition from male to female, but you're the only Navy SEAL to ever do this.
As far as you know, yes.
That's so true too, right? Who knows, right?
That's probably like a really good point also, just to make clear, is that there's going to be people that you work with every day, and there's people that you're working right next to. You don't know. It's not something that has to really be talked about. You know what I mean?
No, you're absolutely right, because a year ago we just moved. We moved and we hired a mover. And later on, I found out that it was I thought it was a man. Yeah, he was a man. And later on, we found out he had transitioned from a woman to a man. And so I had no idea. Just looking at the guy, I had no idea. So it could be.
He's just some dude that was working with you as a mover.
Yeah, did a great job.
The thing is, in the end, it doesn't really matter. In the end, this is such a small thing to be talking about that I really can't wait till the day comes when everybody just stops talking.
Yeah. So, how do you feel about all the attention you're getting?
Well, I try to turn off as much as I can, and I'm not really big as far as spotlight and everything goes. I don't really like it, and as a Navy SEAL especially, I don't like it. But But I accept the fact that sometimes people have to talk about this, and especially for the younger generation. And for what I've been doing with Cait is we've been really concentrating on the kids that are, growing up. And I don't want them to have to grow up in that same isolation and that same sadness that I had to grow up with. And so the more of these stories and more of this that we can pass to them, I think the better off it'll be for future generations.
I want to jump in for 1 second, if I might.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that as much as I know that Kristin doesn't like the publicity and doesn't like to be front and center in the news or in these functions, the use of Kristin to be able to focus on these kids is so crucial. One of the reasons that she and I got together is that I came to her to let her know that in my little area in Central Oregon, we have had in a year 10 suicides. This is an epidemic. And this is what's happening in the teenage transgender community nationwide. There are suicides. There is bullying. There are 40% homeless rate are LGBTQIA kids. So being able to have Kristin as that shining example, to me, it's worth anything that you have to go through. It's worth a little less of your privacy in order to help these kids accept their life and to be able to move forward.
And that's the biggest point, is that I think that the kids growing up, they need to see, the goods and the bads. And the fact is my life has not been that great. I've had a lot of, ups and downs, and it's been a roller coaster. And I'm here now, and everything is pretty good. And I'm married to a great wife, and we live on this farm with a couple of horses and cattle and my dogs that you heard earlier. But I mean, no matter how bad it's ever been and how bad that roller coaster gets, there's going to always be those good times, and you just have to look forward to that. And I think that's what they have to understand is, especially as a high schooler, man, I know what it's like to be bullied, and I know what it's like to be beaten up, not very often because I was a skill. But I mean, I'm going to try to find as much humor as I can in this at all. But no matter how much the bullying is or how bad it is, man, I tell you what, you're going to have some good times and things are going to get better, and just hang on. And that's what I want the message to be, is that just hang on. High school is not forever. You got another couple of years. Just keep on going. And there's people like me, and there's people like Cait, and there's hundreds and thousands of other people out there that will love you for who you are. So grow up, get out of your town, move to Palm Springs is an amazing little city, and I've been in so many really cool places and met so many great people. So just get through it, finish high school, get your degree, and then the world's your oyster. There's going to be some cool stuff happening.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to. My daughter's 17. As a matter of fact, the audience, I talk about her all the time. She just passed her AP presentation, so this goes on. She's going to be an AP capstone thing till junior year and senior year. It's a big deal. Just gave her a presentation today. But I try and tell her, she's going through some drama right now, boyfriend stuff, try and focus on your future and yourself and stuff. But back to your childhood in high school and before that. What was that like with your dating life? Did you date? What was going on?
No, I mean, I was kind of isolated. I isolated myself. So I would look at myself in a mirror and I didn't like anything. I never thought that I was handsome or pretty or anything. So all the adjectives I had for myself and how I would describe myself was ugly and a loner and like not worthy of anything. And so how could I couldn't have a relationship. And so I didn't, I didn't date. I didn't do anything, and I was actually a virgin until I was about 22 years old.
How about just friends and stuff like that?
What's that? Just what?
Yeah, friends, just regular friends.
Oh yeah. I had a few friends, but I mean, even that, my friends were books. I lived in the attic for a while and just read a lot of books. And I mean, it sounds like a terrible story, but it wasn't that bad. You figure out how to survive, you just figure out the best way for you to cope with what's going on. And and then do the best you can. So I had a few friends here and there, and as I look back and I see that I was doing most of it to myself, I see that the way I looked at myself in the mirror, because it didn't really match up, I made myself an isolationist. You know what I mean? The worst thing you can do is to not accept yourself for who you are. So when you look in a mirror, you have to see that that person that you are is a good person, and the better you are to yourself, the better people will treat you, and the better you're going to have it overall. And so I isolated myself, and I made myself into that person. And I didn't have to. It wasn't necessary.
Now, was there anyone you could confide in and talk to about these things?
This is like the 1970s.
Oh, okay.
So,
I thought, well, younger.
I'm old. I know I'm old. Sorry. But you have to figure that the 1970s, growing up in a really small town, I mean, graduating class of less than 100. So if I had like 80 people graduating before internet, before all the stuff, and it was just, you're just alone. I mean, now, you know, the kids do have social media, which sometimes is a blessing and a curse. They do have the internet, and they have support groups. And I think there's a lot more examples in the magazines and on TV and in movies even that they can look at and say who they are, and it can kind of relate. But back in those days when I was growing up, there was none of that.
No, I hear you. I was born in 62. I know exactly what you're talking about. But I grew up in New York, so it was a little bit more.
But that's the thing we have to get these kids to see that there's examples and look for it, and then try to emulate some of the role models and heroes that you see. You know, I mean, and we didn't have that when we were growing up. And I think for Cait also, was we just didn't have those examples.
Mm.
So, and that's what I think, that follow on Twitter and Facebook and find these stories. And for the kids, please just look, you know, open your eyes. You're going to find, you know, hundreds and maybe thousands of people that are just like you. For me, growing up in the 70s in that little tiny town and all by myself, I really was alone. So everything I learned, I had to learn the hard way and by myself. You don't have to do that as a young kid now. You know, as you're growing up, and even as an adult, you're not alone, and you can find others just like you very, very easily. And that's what I implore. Just look around, open your eyes, and you're going to find hundreds of people exactly like you, and they're your friends, and they'll be your support.
What inspired you to join the military?
Well, as I'm talking about my life, you saw how I was growing up as a kid. And so I got bullied a little bit, but I also used to beat up a lot of bullies. And so I felt that was kind of like my calling. I was a really good bully fighter. And so going in the military just seemed like the natural thing to do. I was a sheepdog, you know, fighting for justice. Until the military seemed like a pretty good place to go. So I enlisted and then went into the SEAL teams.
Yeah, that's intense training, right?
Yes, it is. When they talk about SEAL team training, it's 6 months of just everyday torture. It's running
tell
and
him, Kristin, tell him about the boat on the shoulders thing, because I don't think people realize it.
So what you have is you have this boat, and I think the boat weighs, I don't know, 150 pounds or 200 pounds, whatever. And you have 6 guys, and you carry this boat around in your head pretty much constantly all over the place. And especially during Hell Week, that boat is your friend every minute of Hell Week, which is a 1 week long. There's no sleep. For 6 days, you do not sleep. And you carry that boat in your head for 3 miles in the morning from when you're working out or whatever to the chow hall. You eat. You have to do push-ups through the legs up on a boat. You always have to be touching the boat. So the boat has to always be within arm's length or foot length. So you're doing push-ups and sit-ups, and you're carrying it on your head. You go 3 more miles, and you swim. And when you're swimming, you can get off the boat, as they say, go out in the ocean and swim for 2 or 3 miles. You come back in, you carry the boat again on your head for a couple of miles. Then you run for 7 miles, and then you carry the boat around. So this boat is on your head for 6 days straight. It's a torture in itself. So this goes on for 6 months. So that SEAL team training is pretty tough training. They say the toughest in the world.
No, yeah, I'm familiar because my ex-partner, my best friend and ex-partner was NYPD Harbor Aviation. And a lot of guys went from the SEALs into NYPD and dealt with a lot of these guys. Now,
the SEAL team training is not it's hard. It's real super hard. And the people that graduate from that course, it's about 20% graduation. So out of every 100 people, you have 80 people quit along the way. And the only way you can get out of there is you have to quit. You have to raise your hand in the air. So they this not for just like making up. They didn't make all this stuff up just to torture you. It's tests. So everything is been tested out, and they've been doing it the same way for like 50 years. They do it for exact means. Is that they have to make sure that you will never quit when you're in the field. You will never quit your duty. You're going to be loyal to the team, and camaraderie is thick. You're never going to quit. So it's all over there for a reason. And I don't know any place else in society that tests anybody to that extent.
No, that's very true. Yeah. Now, having that on your resume, being a former Navy SEAL, that's very bankable. Are you taking advantage of that? Do you do anything?
Yeah, I get a free bowl of soup every time So, no, I mean, I guess it's easy to joke about it, but I mean, you still have to prove yourself. So no matter what job, I mean, it might open a door. And so, but that door has to be kicked open the rest of the way by yourself and by your capabilities. I would definitely, anybody that was a SEAL and I was hiring, if I had a big business and I needed some people, if you had SEAL team guy, you had Ranger, you had Special Forces, you have Marine, you had school teacher. It's all about the same, isn't it? We all have guns. So I was just kidding. It was a joke.
Yeah, I know. Now, what about that?
Bad joke.
What are you doing for employment now?
But if you had all the stuff written down there, I would let the door be open, but you'd have to prove yourself. Cause I use the 80-10-10 rule all the time. 80% of the people in any job, even the SEALs, 80%, you're good. You do a pretty good job. 10%, you're awesome. But then you have 10% is at the bottom, and I wouldn't give two cents for you. Mm-hmm. Even in the SEALs, there's 10% of you guys, 10 out of the 100, I don't care about. Then the other 80, you guys are all good. Doors open and I want you. Then you have 10% of the cream of the crop. The 10%, they're the super SEALs. And then you have like Admiral McRaven, who's the chancellor down in Texas. And you have, Eric Olson, who is our 4-star Admiral, and Bill Shepard and Chris Cassidy. And you can name on your hand, all these guys who are the super SEALs, who are like the top. That's the 10. But the opposite of that is the 10 really bad ones. So if you saw a SEAL team guy read down a resume, you might be getting one of those 10% at the bottom. So just open a door, make them prove themselves.
What are you doing for employment now?
I'm a farmer.
Okay.
It sounds pretty boring.
No, I'm jealous of both you guys, man. Yeah. I'm living here in Las Vegas. I'm so ready to get out of here.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
I'm semi-retired, so I live on a farm here with my wife, and I give motivation speeches and leadership speeches. So I fly around the country. I go to universities and colleges, and I give a 90-minute talk. And at the end of almost every talk I give, it's like standing ovations, and people they're like, yeah. It's usually pretty good. I mean, I get a really good response. I think I'm a pretty good talker.
Oh yeah. I'm sitting back, I'm listening. Now, what about when you were in the SEALs? How did this affect your military duty? This transitioning your sexual identity? Was there any kind of effect?
I mean, yeah. I mean, once in a while. I mean, minor, but it was when I had time off. So if it was a weekend and I had like weekend furlough where I just had a couple days just to kind of chill out, then it would kind of catch up with me. And then, because I had nothing really going on, so my mind was not busy. And most of the time in the SEALs, my job and what my duty was to my country, and to, just like I said, as a sheepdog and fighting for justice, my job was so important that I couldn't let my own personal kind of comfort or my own personal identity, I didn't have time for it. I was a Navy SEAL. I was Senior Chief Beck, and that was the only thing I had to do. And so I didn't have time for my own personal security or personal anything. Mm. I was the job 100% of the time.
Now, did you ever confide in any of the SEALs about what was going on?
Yeah, it's a pretty funny story. I had one SEAL team buddy. His name is Mike, and he's the only person in the SEALs, and probably my whole family up until just recently that ever knew anything about me, about any of this. And I lived on a sailboat, and I was out in the moorings, out on, basically tied up to a buoy. And my buddy had a boat that was real close to my boat. And we had lights on the boats. And so I saw his light on, and I already had a few beers. And so I took a 6-pack and I put it in my dinghy, and I rowed over to his boat, and I was wearing a dress and a silly little wig or something, I don't know. And I just knocked on his boat, and I was like, "Hey, Mike." And so he came up on deck, and he looked down at me, and I was like, "Hey, mind if I come aboard and have a couple of beers?" He's like, "I'm having beers anyway, come up." And then as I was getting up, he was like, "Hey, what's up with the dress?" And I was like, and so I started talking to him about it. And then we just had a conversation about it. And he says, I'm from California, and a little more relaxed as far as some of that kind of stuff goes, but don't ever do this in front of anybody else in the SEALs, because you'll lose your job and you'll probably get beat up. And I was like, all right, good to know. So he was the only person I ever told about that.
But the thing is, people really are way more accepting than we give them credit for. Even big tough guys, there's that stereotype of cops and soldiers being these right-wing, closed-minded people. But it's really not true, in my experience anyway. How about you?
Well, remember the 80-10-10 rule?
Right.
Let's just say in the SEAL teams, I would say 80% of the SEALs, they're kind of like, well, that's cool, man. You're all right. You did a good job in the SEALs and whatever, dude. So that's 80%. Then you have 10% and they're like, right on. And they'll talk about a family member who was gay or transgender, and they'll talk about their own experiences and say, right on, bro. I support you.
Did I lose you?
Sister. And then,
Hey, are you there?
So you had the 10% guys going, yeah, right on. And then you have the bottom 10%, right? So you have the 10% that are really hateful and are really mean. So the 80-10-10 rule, I think it applies to that also.
I was trying to explain to Ed, Kristin, that part of what we do try to do is educate people and save people. And that education does save people. So I think maybe we should talk to him about Stonewall and all the stuff that led up to where we are in 2018 with the LGBTQIA community.
Well, how about you start with the Stonewall? Because you were there, weren't you?
I will, if we get Ed back.
Cait, just go on and talk about Stonewall and your experiences and how you got started in PFLAG and everything.
Well, for people who don't know about Stonewall was it's now a national landmark, but Stonewall was a bar, a pretty derelict bar in New York City. And in 1967 and 68, the police were raiding it constantly. They were beating members of the gay community, gay men, lesbian women, and transgender. At that time, they were still just called trannies. And the population was kind of the rougher side of the crowd, until one afternoon the people in the bar and the LGBTQ community finally had enough, and they stood up and they fought for themselves. People died. They
fought against the police.
They did, and people died until other members of the community came forward, and it was actually the drag queens that started the whole saving grace for this movement. So Stonewall has become a national monument for LGBTQ rights and how far we've advanced. And as much as I'd like to talk about how far we've advanced, in 2017 with the new administration, we took about 20 steps backward with stripping of LGBTQ rights. And that's my concern now, is stripping away rights that these kids had, bathroom protections, all of that. Feelings on that?
So Stonewall was also like one of those, that was like a tipping point. But at the same time, in San Francisco, you had a few outbursts and riots. And there was also stuff going on down in San Diego. So it was the East and West Coasts were all kind of like rioting against this harassment. And it was a constant harassment against the LGBT community by police. And they were given the free-for-all. The police were given it from the state and city authorities and everybody else. They were just totally being backed up. Is that pretty much a good?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly what was going on. Fortunately, we had people like Harvey Milk they were great at polarizing people and pulling them together and pulling the community together. As Harvey said, you got to give them hope. And that's exactly where we are today, trying to give them hope.
And I don't know if it's if you could look at what's going on right now with police harassment against African American youth in a lot of these cities, and the way we're starting to get a lot of this violence and the fighting back. Does that sound kind of like a pretty similar story?
It does. It does. And I believe there still is. I still believe there is harassment. It's not nearly as bad with the police departments. And now most of the police departments across this country hire members of the LGBTQ and actually recruit them. San Francisco PD was one of the first police departments in the nation to hire gay officers. Same with our fire department in San Francisco. This has done a wonderful thing for the community because you're putting people that are members of the community into a community to police. And so it's cut down on the violence level.
Isn't that amazing that it all comes back around to be the same thing? Even amongst African American, we see Black Lives Matter and everything else. That intersection between minorities and harassment and abuse. But once you start getting community involvement and community policing, and I'll do those air quotes, and that's what needs to happen, is that you need representation from the whole community in each police department, to be within that community and working with each other and helping each other. And it really is. It's not, I like police forces to be for that public service and peacemakers rather than law enforcement. And I think that's what we really need to start looking at more also.
Well, and my question would be for the transgender community. So because Trump's administration has now been stopped and they can no longer get rid of transgenders in the military, they are actively able to join the service. I'm curious to know how many will, what will become of it, and then how can we take the transgenders in the military and translate that into transgender community in the police department, the fire department, the same as we did with the gay community.
Well, I know that a great example for transgender people in law enforcement in San Diego, there's a transgender police officer, and I'm totally forgetting her name right now. It's darn it, she's gonna yell at me now because I'm forgetting her name. But in San Diego Police, she's awesome. She's a great example of who we can be and what we can do. And she's leading a charge. And I'm going to look her name up right now because I'm really embarrassed that I don't know her name. Hey, but that's in the military, I think that we have to look at the transgender people who are currently serving, who are able to come out openly and serve as transgender military service people. And a friend of mine has just gone through all the surgeries and done everything and is getting physicians' authorizations and everything else to go back to flying helicopters.
Hey, that's a good question. Guys, I'm back. What is going on with that? Because when Trump, he made an announcement off the fly that they were no longer going to allow transgenders in the military. What is going on? What's the current status with that now?
Cait?
Kristin?
Well, so I know that there was supposed to be something coming out. Secretary Mattis was putting some recommendations together to give to the White House. And then I'm not sure how far along it's gone because he hasn't. And if it has been released, it might just be privately released within the White House. But that was like today or this week. And so there's still a lot going on that we always don't have all the data.
There is no ban. There is currently no ban on transgender serving in the military. So it's just about as simple as that. So many states filed suit. So many counties filed suit that I think the Justice Department released a statement a month ago that they're just not going to fight it.
But there were still recommendations from Secretary Mattis that he was putting together. So he was trying to put a study together to give the White House, and then the White House is either going to give up based on Secretary Mattis's recommendations, or they're going to continue to fight or whatever. But I know with the Justice Department, it's been shot down a number of times.
Right.
You know,
But I think the White House, they're going to continue pursuing it because they have their own agendas.
Yeah. Here we have two people just wrote a book, right? Hero to Zero, a Navy SEAL's true life journey, just wrote a book about this topic. They're two probably top experts on the subject, and there's so much confusion going on with Trump and the military that you guys don't even know what's going on. So, Kristin, how much
can you imagine being in the military though? So the military leaders right now have gone back and forth so many times. That's a problem. Because right now they've been like, everybody's, okay, you're good, you can be open, and you can serve. Then it was turned off, and it's turned back on, turned off, and it's like super confusing. And so leadership has to have clear, concise guidance to be a good leader. And so it's confusing for everybody.
Now, at the time when you were in the SEALs, would it have been legal for you to come out and say, hey, I want to transition?
No, not even close. Okay. And this is like, I joined before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then Don't Ask, Don't Tell started, and then Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And so now it's okay to be open as gay or lesbian, but the entire time transgender was always illegal because of, mental diagnostic manuals at DSMs. So there was always things on the books and always a prejudice against transgender people, far above being gay or lesbian.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your military career was like? Any kind of missions you went on? What it was like? What you did?
There's a ton of missions, and a lot of my career is still classified, so I can't really talk about too much of it. But there is one story. Like I said, I give speeches at universities and colleges. So there is one story that I try to bring out. And it's about the missions we used to go on. We were doing captures of these high-ranking Al-Qaeda people. And so one of them I was going in after. It was a pretty tough mission. We went in really quiet. We went up over the wall and was going really quiet. And then I was sneaking alongside of a building inside of a compound. And suddenly everything starts going haywire, explosion, shooting, everything else. So we kicked the door in really quick. And it's the guy we were looking for. It's his room. And so he's getting up off his bed, and his bed was like, 8 feet away. And he's getting up off his bed, going to grab his guns. There's a door behind him that's opening up with his brother coming in with guns, and on the floor screaming is his wife. And in the middle of that room, there's this baby's crib, and stands up inside of that crib. It's a pretty good sized crib. It's probably like a 2-year-old maybe, just enough to grab a hold of the side of the crib and kind of stand up and start crying. And so everything's going all crazy all around this whole scene. And I leave the doorway and I get off the wall and I run in the middle of the room in the middle of all this. And I grab the baby and hold the baby real close to my body armor, trying to protect it. As the father and brother and everybody, they're all coming in shooting. And I just try to get out of that room, and save the baby. And so after everything's all settled down, everything's done, I'm able to give the kid to the mom. And she grabs the kid out of my hands, is yelling at me, and I'm like, wait, your husband was the one shooting. I wasn't. I was trying to save it. I was trying to save the baby. It was like this really tough time to just see all this happening and see that kid, in the middle of all that.
Yeah, can you imagine?
All of this, who I am, maybe, from looking at me from when I was a kid, I will always be that sheepdog. I always try to save anybody that I can save. I'll never change that. No matter how much danger I put myself in, I would always try to sacrifice myself to try to save that innocent person. No matter, I didn't know who that person was, but it was still an innocent person in the middle of chaos, and I had to try to save him.
This was in Afghanistan?
Yes. Yeah.
What year was that?
2008, Afghanistan.
2008. Hey, let me ask you a question now. I've had Charles Strange on the show, the father of that SEAL who was involved in the Bin Laden abduction. And then there was that strange, what was it called? Where the helicopter crashed.
Yeah.
What was that called again?
Bin Laden?
Yeah, no, when the operation when the helicopter crashed.
Yeah, Operation it was going after Geronimo.
Something. It was, do you know, have you heard any scuttlebutt about that helicopter crash where all those SEALs died?
Yeah, that was during a whole different operation. That was like the movie was made about that with Lone Survivor.
Yeah.
So that was a whole different mission. So that helicopter crashed and killed a whole bunch of guys on it. It was a lot of friends of mine.
You know those guys.
Chris and Rat and all those guys, man. They were guys that I served with pretty close.
You know, they told me about something called a ramp ceremony where the coffins were brought into this hangar and a Muslim imam came in and gave a curse basically over the coffins. You familiar with that?
No, I didn't hear about that.
It was very shocking. The whole thing. You got to listen to Charles Strange. He's the father of one of these young men that died on this helicopter crash. It's very suspicious.
I'm not so. It sounds like conspiracy theory.
Oh no, this is the father. This is Tilson's father's involved in this. Okay, but back to this. What about your experiences? Do you have any PTSD from dealing with all the experiences over there?
I don't even know what does that stand for? No, it's I mean, I think everybody that goes to war and everybody that's like right outside the wire and doing the work, you're going to have some kind of, PTS. You're going to have some kind of traumatic, memories of everything.
Sure.
Because war is not a natural thing for us. It's horrible. I mean, you're going over there and you're seeing stuff and you're doing stuff and you're going through everything that's going on, You're going to have something. And, you're going to have dreams, you're going to have thoughts, there's always going to be some reminiscence about it. And it's how you deal with it, And I think that's the thing, is that war is horrible and we have to do everything we can. And that's why I want more veterans in politics. Because I swear that if you had a bunch more veterans up there in Congress, you had more veterans in politics, I think you'd have a lot less chance of going to war. Because we've been there, and we see it. And I would do everything I can. If I was a politician sitting up there in one of those seats, I would have been fighting like crazy and have done anything I could to keep us out. Keep us, because I don't want anybody doing that. I don't want anybody going through what I had to go through. So it's horrible. And you have PTSD with people that are if you're in a car accident, you have PTSD.
No, Boyce has PTSD from being in a federal prison and watching people around him murdered. So all these years later, he still suffers from PTSD.
Yeah, because our minds are powerful.
From the clients I deal with and some of these shows that I do, I have PTSD. But am I confused, Kristin? Did you run for office?
Yeah, I ran for Congress a couple of years ago. Yeah.
How'd that go?
It went okay. I mean, in a few ways. I had a platform with about 80 different, major issues that I was trying to solve. And for me, I'm not going to sit there and put my hand in the air and saying, look at all these problems. Look at this is bad. This is bad. And you're doing a terrible job here, and point at the other people in office. And I said, if I'm going to have a problem and bring up an issue, I'm going to have a solution. And so I had like these, every time I had a problem, I had solutions. I had pages and pages. I had 400, 500 pages on my website of solutions, and good solutions. And I think Cait read through a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, and I think I overwhelmed most people. I don't think they wanted anybody. I think they like one trick ponies. They only want you to have one issue, and, I don't think people want to read very much about candidates. I think they want to read a bumper sticker and they want to believe all the BS, and it's mostly BS. I don't believe most of politicians nowadays. I think they're all liars. I'm tired
I would
of
see Kristin run for president.
I wouldn't mind seeing Christopher Boyce run for office.
Yeah.
Well, Christopher Boyce couldn't run because he's a convicted felon.
Yeah.
But I don't think that any of us could ever win, because I think that we're too truthful. I speak from my heart, and I'll tell you what I really think. And I think as a politician, you can't do that. Because as a politician, you need to take all the money and lie your ass off. I hate it.
So, Cait, I'd like to ask both you about back to the PTSD. Is Christopher Boyce, has he gotten any kind of treatment or therapy for his PTSD? And I'd like to ask you too, Kristin, if you've done that, and also too with your other struggles here with this transitioning. Have you received any kind of therapy or counseling and stuff?
Chris Boyce did receive some counseling for his PTSD. Unfortunately, the PTSD counseling in this country is really limited. And this is a problem that veterans face every day. is that you have psychotherapists out there that place themselves in a position of being PTSD counselors that really aren't. A lot of them can do more harm than good. We did face quite a bit of that. But, he went through sort of the normal things. I mean, there was a bout with alcoholism. There was a bout where we had to have separate rooms because he didn't sleep at night. The constant torment, waking up in the middle of the night, scared to death and not knowing where he is. Things like that happen. Prison does it. The military does it. Any kind of armed struggle is going to do it. When the people around you are being killed, it's going to leave a lasting impression on your mind.
Yep. So the thing is, when you talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so I want to get that D off of there. It's not a disorder. Post-traumatic stress, PTS, is what everybody's been referring to it as recently, because it's not a disorder. This is a natural response for your brain and your mental well-being is for you to protect yourself. And so your brain is coping with this struggle past a traumatic situation. And so being able to talk to somebody who's experienced at it, which just like Cait was saying, is very difficult to find a therapist who truly understands in a personal way, and it has to be personal, to speak to you about these situations. And so one of the big issues I have is I go to the VA and I'm in one of a group setting and I have a therapist that doesn't know anything about combat. It was never in the military and just cannot relate. And so the biggest thing a therapist can do is you have to relate in some way through some other experiences, through something. You can't just learn it from a book. And that's what I keep finding is the issue, is that if you have your PhD and all you did was study and get a bunch of book work, you don't understand how to really talk about it. You can only recite and regurgitate stuff that's written down on a piece of paper. And I think that's the biggest problem in the VA, is they need to we need more veterans trained on how to do therapy. Because I think I would be 1,000 times better therapist as a PTS therapist than most of those PhDs, because I've gone through it and I've studied it and I can relate my story and how I worked through it in some positive ways. And I would just relay that and hear the stories and talk to other veterans about this. So we just need to, having a PhD isn't always the best answer as a therapist. Sometimes personal experience is a better teacher.
Have you ever considered doing that, being a therapist?
No, because the therapists drive me crazy. No, I mean, if they would take away some of the stringent BS paper hanging on the wall qualifications for me to actually sit down with some of these groups, then yeah, I would do that. And I think that's what the VA has to work through, is the VA needs to reconcile that the normal procedures and the way they look at therapy, the way they look at healing, we have to start looking at alternative medicine and look at alternative ways to do this. I want to do something different. I don't want to sit there with the guy from Berkeley that's a PhD in trauma and Freudian BS. You know, I'd rather sit down with that other combat vet and a bunch of us sit around a bonfire with a couple of beers. And that's better therapy for me and for most of the people I meet. You know, I want to sit around and do some vision quests. I want to sit around and talk through some shamanic astrology that I was talking to Cait and she laughed at me. But I want to look at alternatives. I don't want the piece of paper on a wall PhD guys. And if the VA can reconcile the fact that some of these other people with different approaches, sometimes they're just as beneficial to the health and well-being of a person, that they need to recognize that fact.
Well, and this is one of the things that Kristin is doing by talking to these young kids. I mean, she is actually being a PTSD counselor by being able to reach out to these kids who are transitioning or are members of the LGBTQIA community. So it's been an extreme helpful moment in this life.
You know, I
think that's what we need to start doing, is recognizing the expertise by being there and by going through the experiences rather than reading about the experiences. I think that somebody that is in the military, just like I did in the Navy SEALs, I did 20 years in the Navy SEALs. 20 years of dedicated service and working every day and learning a lot in a lot of different countries, a lot of different people. And where's my PhD on the wall? But I could have gone to Berkeley and done, 6 years. I'd have pieces of paper all over the wall, and they would let me teach anybody I want. So my 20 years doesn't count because it was on a job experiential. It wasn't theoretical.
We're totally
we put a higher
I think we're out of time.
on theoretical than we do experiential.
We got about 2 minutes left, so I'd like each of you to take like a minute, sum up what do you want to leave us with. Kristin, you go first for about a minute, then Cait, what do you want to leave us with in this story of Kristin's journey?
So my 1 minute bumper sticker. I'll go first. Sorry, Cait, you want to go first?
No, you go first.
Okay, so I think pretty much what I was talking about at the end there is that I think experiential. I think people that have experiences, and we have to somehow validate the fact that I've gone through a lot of stuff. I've experienced a lot of stuff, and through all these experiences, I've gained enough wisdom to be able to pass on some of these things. And we have to start having more of an emphasis on that rather than the theoretical and the pieces of paper. I want to be able to talk to people and really let them know this is what I've been, this is what I've done, and I've ridden on that roller coaster. I've been in that seat, and I rode the roller coaster, and I've survived it, and here's what I learned. And then people would be able to listen to that and go, yeah, I'm on a roller coaster right now, and you already rode that coaster? Heck, man, I want to learn from you. I wish we could open our eyes. Alternative medicine, alternative learning.
Thank you so much, Cait Boyce and Kristin Beck, American Sons, The Untold Story of the Falcon and the Snowman, and soon to be released, Hero to Zero, a Navy SEAL's true life journey. Kristin, how can people get a hold of you real quick?
My Twitter is Valor for Us. Valor, number 4, us.
And Cait?
Valor's not for me, Valor's for us. Twitter.
My Twitter account is Cait Boyce.
Okay, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now a word from our sponsors.
People are waking up. They're standing up to those pushing pesticides and GMOs as safe alternatives for a starving world. What a bunch of crap! I tell you, I'd rather eat dirt. So I drink Life Change Tea. It's an herbal drink, cleansing my body of toxic sludge and nasty chemicals, and of course, ridding the intruders that are hidden in my so-called food. And by the way, Life Change Tea is non-GMO and organic. No fillers, no yuck. Just a great defense against you-know-what. May the supplement force awaken you. Don't fall to the dark side. Sorry. I went to the movies last night. Anyway, enough said. How do you get that herbal drink and change your life? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. You will awaken. You will get stronger, and you might even lose a bit of weight. So awaken to Life Change Tea and the many one-of-a-kind supplements at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. May the supplement force be with you.
Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com. Online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we can trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company located in India. So you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service to boot. They offer all kinds of services, business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshore research networking, customer care, press release content writing and distribution, and much, much more. They offer website development, e-commerce solutions, mobile responsive designs. Now, I've personally worked with Subash for over 10 years, This is the man that puts out my press releases. They've done work on my websites, so I can personally recommend SubhashTechnosis.com. You can find a link to Subash Technosis at OppermanReport.com and also AwakeRadio.us. You can have your ad played here at OppermanReport.com every Friday night, 5 p.m., and Saturday night, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Friday nights, too, we do a live portion for 1 hour that I just do a live monologue. The ads are very, very inexpensive, and they're also played in the Opperman Report member section. In the member section, you can find all kinds of exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. It's as cheap as $6 a month, $20 a quarter, or $75 for a year. If you contact me directly at oppermanreport@gmail.com, I'll set you up with a little special deal there where you get a discount if you PayPal me directly, and you can get a copy of my book. I want to thank Sean Duff from strawmanmusic.com. He's an excellent musician. And I also want to thank William Ramsey, who helps us to produce the show and book guests. You can find William Ramsey, who's an excellent author, at William Ramsey Investigates on YouTube. Remember, all these shows on Awake are brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You also do all the kind of different services for you. An online dating service investigation. It's called an online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us your husband or your boyfriend, your girlfriend's email address, and we trace it back to their online dating websites. And we return a list of all the dating sites that that email is registered to. We can expand on that investigation and trace it back to porn sites, escort service sites, swinger sites, gambling websites, and even prescription drug websites. If you think your ex-husband or something is addicted to prescription medication or involved in an extreme online pornography addiction, we can produce a report for you that you can use in court. Adoption investigations. If you want to locate your birth parents or your birth child you gave away for adoption, we can do adoption investigations for you. Asset searches for you. Locate bank accounts, hidden assets, hidden properties, hidden income, all different kinds of services in the asset search investigation. Email tracing. If you need to locate or identify somebody from just an email address, we do an email trace investigation for you, and all kinds of digital forensics, computer and cell phone digital forensics, where we can recover deleted content from an email or a hard drive and produce a report for you that you can use in court. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com.